Um, we are going to be talking about email marketing, which is a super exciting topic from my perspective, because the email list is the thing that you own, the one of the only things that you own when you are doing digital marketing, and it's usually the first thing that you can implement when you have a list, and it gives you some really great results because you're usually upselling or reselling to an existing client list and leads who have been following you for a while. So my name is Rena Little from Littleworks Indie Media, and we're a small agency in Vancouver. And my guest is my
Yes,
co-host.
and I'm a regular. Hi, everyone. I'm Greg McKinnon with Original 72 Creative, and we're a full service website graphic design and digital marketing firm in Vancouver.
Terrific. So let's just jump right on in here. And of course, you're always welcome to drop your comments your questions in the comments below. We'll try to answer them now, or we'll come back to them and leave you written answers later on. Okay, so we were talking about what is the best order to discuss this topic, and we came up with two different ideas, and we're going with mine. And really, I wanted to sort of frame why email marketing is super exciting if you're new to it. You want to start with a list, and usually that list is going to be people that you're already in contact with. So clients, people who you network with, um, leads that you've gotten onto your list, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And so it's a really, really great way to start. And what we want to make sure that we're not doing is sending bulk email from your email inbox. So whether it's Gmail or another kind of email that you have, we want to really actually make sure that you're not doing that, because here's how it works. You're going to get yourself into big trouble with the email exchanges. So when email goes out into the world, it goes from your computer to your server. It goes to these things called email exchanges, and there's not one unified system out there. It's just a whole bunch of email exchanges, and they'll route the email until it gets to the final destination. And when they have all these anti-spam filters, and it's beyond just what you get in your Gmail when it filters out, you don't see the filtered out stuff. So what happens is, if you trigger the anti-spam filter, they will stop delivering your email to your recipients list. And but not only that, they will stop delivering your email, period. So not just your newsletters, but everything. And it's really hard to tell, because you might be able to send emails to a certain number of people, but then there's like two or three clients that you just something's happened and they're not getting your emails anymore. It's often because people send multiple emails from your email. So if you're doing that, it's really about across an organization. So it's across a domain. It's about 50 emails per hour that they're expecting. That'll keep you under the threshold. So what are the alternatives? Well, we're going to use bulk email platforms. And you've probably heard of MailChimp and Constant Contact. Those are a couple of the bigger, the more well-known ones. There are a ton of them. They're called bulk email platforms, and that's exactly what they do. They send bulk emails. So um, they trigger different things with the email exchanges and can bypass. And a lot of them even do delivery. Not all at once. They will stagger the delivery, so that also helps with deliverability. And that's your number one spot to start. So I have a few clients, and they continually send out emails from their Gmail account. They forget or whatever it is. And it's a pain in the butt to contact those email exchanges. You basically have to plead ignorance, say you're sorry and that you'll never do it again. And sometimes they'll manually take you off that list. And sometimes they keep you on that list for a period of time, and there is no appeal system at all. And it's very time consuming and a pain in the butt. So don't do that to yourself. You will regret it. Okay,
I was going to
so
jump in with another thing that you didn't mention, but people should be aware of is that not only does your normal email, whether you're using a Gmail or even your own personal domain, email with whoever your provider is the sending limit that you had mentioned, certain number of messages every half hour or hour. Usually it's, I don't know, like 30 to 50 per half hour, somewhere around there. But
For
there's
half hour.
also typically a email cap, like how many people you can have on an email, because if
Oh,
you're just one of the things is, initially I thought maybe you were talking about people are just using their email and putting everyone in the BCC field,
yeah.
right, and sending,
Yeah.
which you're going to have limits of how many people you can actually send to from your
Mhm.
own email, depending on who your provider is as well. So
Yeah, so the platforms are really there to help you not get into trouble for sending spam unwittingly. So that's I didn't know about that. That's great. I have never tried to send a BCC with all my contacts, so I don't know. Okay, so that's the number one thing. If you go away and that's it, that's all you take from this. This is important. So bulk emailers are platforms like MailChimp and Constant Contact, and there are a bunch of others, Clavio and some other ones, and they all have slightly different features, and they're really adding on so you can do a lot more things than just email. But we're going to focus on just email. And so the next thing that we want to talk about is about the differences. I want to talk about the differences between anti-spam legislation in the United States and Canada, because this is also a really not known fact. So in Canada, you can take you can, if people put email addresses up for the purpose of receiving business email, they can put that on a list. So that's why things like LinkedIn, it's all, you have to be connected, and people put up info at, or they put up um, forms, contact forms on websites. So you can't put role based emails onto your list unless you have express consent. Um, and some of the platforms will actually encourage you not to do that. But role based emails, just for those who don't know, is admin at, info at, accounting at, those kinds of role based email addresses. So that's another thing. And then the other thing that you have to remember for Castle is that we have an opt in um, system in Canada. So people have to opt into your list. You can't just choose all of your friends. Well, maybe your friends wouldn't mind, but you can't choose. Oh, yeah, the best one. You can't choose your networking group. If you go to a networking group and you get a pile of business cards, you can't just take those business cards and put them on your newsletter list. It's not allowed. And then uh, um, and then you need to have like so it's, we're opt in, that's the point, we're opt in, the point. And then the United States is opt out. So if you can find an email address, you're allowed to put it on your list, and then the person is expected to opt out if they don't want it. So that's the difference. I think the best way to proceed, because we also don't want to irritate people either, express consent is best. Say it with me: express consent is best.
best.
Okay, so express consent is when somebody actually clicks the link, the little tick box on your form saying, yes, I want to receive newsletters. They go to your website, they put in their information to sign up for your email. They're at an event. Put their name and their email on a piece of paper that you've got out there that says specifically that it's going to be for email newsletters. Sign up. All of those ways are excellent ways. And there's a big reason. When you're a larger company, you can actually work with what's called implied consent a lot easier. So, implied consent is you are allowed to send email to somebody that you've done business with. For it's implied that you need to contact them for business services purposes. It's a little bit of a gray area to put them on your newsletter, but it's not forbidden. And but you have to keep track of dates. So you need to drop those people off 2 years after the last time they purchased or did business with you. And that's a lot to keep track of when you're a really small business and you don't have a robust CRM. So my advice to everyone is just deal with express consent. It keeps you above board, and it doesn't give you any headaches. And the fees with getting into trouble are quite high, I hear, and it's just unpleasant. So just save yourself a whole lot of trouble, and you follow express consent rules, which is people signing up themselves. Now, you can get verbal express consent from people by asking them, Greg, would you like to sign up to my newsletter?
Yes.
Okay, so now you all heard it. I do have proof. So if you're not recording your calls, you don't need that kind of level of proof. All you need is a spreadsheet that you keep. You put the person's name down for oral consent, and then you write down the date and you say a phone call or something like that, or a video call or whatever it is, and you keep track that way. And this is what's called doing your due diligence. So you store these documents on your somewhere. You have to keep them. All the signups that you pieces of paper or books that you use for sign up at events, you need to keep those. This will help you if you ever get into any kind of trouble. You have some record, you can go figure out what happened, because you'll be asked to provide those records. And then, so that's pretty much the short form of Castle compliance. Sign up newsletter lists. There is more to do with the actual newsletter, but we're going to move into content.
I wanted
Uh,
to ask one question before we move
yeah,
on to the content, because
yeah,
this was something that I was unaware of when we prepped for the topic.
yeah,
Because I always had thought that you had to have, like, it was mandatory to have the double opt-in. So
no,
if the
yeah,
double opt-in isn't mandatory, and anyone who knows someone's email address can go to a
yeah,
website and enter
yeah,
their email address and put them on a list, how does
yeah.
how does that work?
Yeah, exactly. So that's where keeping track of your lists. So usually I tend to download mine regularly, so I don't lose that data from my bulk emailer provider, and I store that. And when you download that information, it carries an IP address. So as long as it's not you putting it in, you're fine. You're golden. But you're absolutely right. I mean, I've had that. I actually had this weird scammy thing happen a number of months ago now, where somebody signed me up for all of those stupid um, um, questionnaire quiz survey accounts.
Yes.
Hundreds of them. I had to go through and say, I need to cancel this account. And I don't know what they got out of it except for malice. It's just an
Mhm,
annoyance. It's like
mhm.
other kinds of spammy things. They're annoyances. Um, so that you can absolutely do that. MailChimp for a while there, when Castle first came out, they changed to or either that or they started out as double opt-in. I can't remember which. But the follow through rate for double opt in was not very high, and people and it's not a regulated thing, so they took it off. They took the double opt in off as the default. You can go back and add that double opt in, but you just have to do it in your settings. But you are going to grow your list a lot smaller if you do that.
Mhm.
Um, Sometimes those double opt-ins end up in spam folders and things like that, and people just never get back to doing that.
It's
It's
good to
not that
know
they don't.
because a lot of clients that I've talked to are always looking at their list and going like, "Why are all these people on my list?" and like unconfirmed. And if like you say, if you keep really good records,
Yeah,
then you should be able to safely take that double opt-in off and just
yeah,
make sure you're really good with keeping your records
yeah,
so that
yeah,
anybody who is added to your list, you can go back and say, this is
yeah,
where it went on and this is why
yeah.
or how.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So the things that tip the CRTC off is that if you are uploading a whole pile of unconfirmed ones all in the same day and it looks like it comes from a spreadsheet, then that's going to tip someone off. But if you've got people that are adding themselves and not fulfilling the double opt-in, so sometimes that happens when you do contests, when you run contests on Instagram and people have to put their email in and sign up for your list. Sometimes they don't do the double opt-in, um, and they can still take themselves off really easily, but you're keeping yourself within the rules, within the limits of what we're
Mhm.
supposed to be
Mhm.
doing, and you're not irritating people. We don't really want to, even if it is legal, doesn't mean that we should be doing it necessarily. We want to keep a raving review list, not how do I get myself off this list people,
Mhm.
we don't want that. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. On to content.
Right. So when it comes to castle compliance, the only two things that you really need on your newsletter or e-blast is your address and contact information. You can also send them to a link. You can put a link to the website if your address and contact information is on your website, but chances are that is actually on your newsletter list anyways, because most of the platforms require you to have that. It's
Mhm.
very hard to take it off. I did see somebody a couple of years ago had they used white text for all of their
Oh,
bottom
yeah.
stuff. The unsubscribe was white, and then they put a white background. So they basically effectively hid all of the legal stuff, which is not good. And that's what
The
we
old
don't want.
black hat SEO technique.
Yeah, so technically you are following the rules, but it's a little underhanded and people can't see the unsubscribe. It's just annoying and it's not good practice, I don't think. So you're going to need your address, which is already organized on it if you are using a bulk email platform. And then you also have to have a one-click unsubscribe. So not the one that sends you to a page and asks you to put your email in and makes you unclick, and not one that makes you log into your account and change your subscription. It has to be one click opt out in Canada. So, and a lot of American companies are starting to follow suit. I actually just noticed one yesterday. RSS feed, which is a domain provider, I have spent 5 years trying to get off their list because I set up an account for a client. I changed all the email notification spaces, but obviously, one place I didn't put their email and
Mm.
they were unable to find it also. And so I kept getting all of their newsletters and I actually reported them to the CRTC. I noticed this morning they have a one-click unsubscribe button finally, and right when Castle happened, when the legislation came in, there was another American company that I reported, and the next email was correct. So it does work. Reporting does work, and that means that you're going to the CRTC to report. And there is one spot where you can just add whatever it is that you want for
Mhm.
spammers. And some of them there's no point because it's all coming from like it's usually just the people that are just misguided that need the letter from the CRTC. People who are willingly and knowingly and wanting to spam and scam you, you can't fix that.
Yeah.
So yeah, usually, yeah. And so for for content, we talked about what kinds of messaging. So you do newsletters for your clients, don't you, Greg? I think I've heard you say that.
Not a lot, but I
Mhm.
will coach them on you, having a newsletter if they want a
Yeah,
newsletter, and what kind of things that they should be sending out and how
right.
often, and work with them on that strategy part.
Okay. So just quickly, what do you recommend they put out? What kinds of messaging?
Well, it's going to depend on the business. Obviously, most of my clients who are doing this are basically trying to get more people to come and buy things on their stores because they're e-commerce sites. So
Yeah.
we're coming up with sales or promotion type of emails to promote certain products if it's seasonal, things like that,
Yeah.
or just having introducing some type of maybe monthly news for their business that we could come up with so that we can be sending something out monthly that's happening around the business. Those kinds of things, and then we just work to define those kind of things and put a schedule together and start accumulating the content. And
Okay, cool. So I have a few tips about that. So first of all, when you're thinking about content on your website, absolutely the kinds of topics that Greg was brought up are very good, topical and relevant content for your viewers. The technical tips that I would recommend is make sure that your content isn't, your newsletter isn't a scroll with 12 articles and all sorts of things to look at. You want to really focus your people on what is the big call to action that you want them to do. Now, it's not always the same, and it might vary from business to business and industry to industry, but you want to identify what your primary call to action is and put that up the first thing and have a good, clear call to action, usually with a button that takes you somewhere else to fulfill the sale or the, read more part or whatever it is. You don't want to have all of your text in the newsletter. You want a teaser piece of text. So if you're sharing a blog article, teaser piece of text, an image, and then the title of the blog article. And the teaser piece of text can be the first couple of sentences of your blog article, but sometimes it works better if you actually do a little tiny summary or a little benefit statement as to why somebody would want to know about what's the content that's in your blog article, and then a read more. So it doesn't have to be exactly it doesn't have to be fed directly from your blog article. Oh no. um, okay, so then after that, sorry, I've got my phone going, that's terrible.
Mhm.
um, Basically, we want to link the images. So you're going to link the read more bit. You're going to link the title of whatever you're talking about, and you're going to link the images, because you want to really make sure that that person gets to the spot. Not everybody can tell when something is linked. If it's the title, they might not notice, but chances are they will click something. And
Mhm.
the link, reporting on the link clicks in these bulk emailers can give you some really good, useful information as to how to tweak your email moving forward based on where those link clicks came from. Very important metric. And then I always recommend one main piece of information that takes up almost the whole thing, sort of like an e-blast. And then if you have a couple of little minor mentions below
Mhm.
that, that's great. Especially if you're trying to have a sale or a promotion or a new launch of a product or something like that, and you're trying to make a sale, then just that one. Sometimes I just put out one thing and do an e-blast instead of a full newsletter. That can be really useful too.
It's like a landing page to me, right? Like a landing page on a website needs to be focused on one goal to convert one goal, and at the top you should have all of the main information. The difference to me is with the email. Obviously, a landing page on your site, you can get way more wordy and have a lot more content, whereas in the email you want it to be more succinct and have the read more on our website or buy now or whatever it is to pull them into the website so that you can hopefully convert them into a customer or a buyer. And
Yeah.
then additionally to that, I do like your mention of really focus on one thing as like an e-blast, one topic. But if you do have a couple of other things, mention them, down below as sub things. Um, and that, I think that's a really good way to do it because
Yeah.
of the fact of your people don't sit there and read like a lot. They'll probably skim it, see the basics of what the email newsletter has in it, and move
Yeah.
on to the next because everybody gets so much email, right? So that's why
Yeah.
you really need to have those highlights right away, because I don't know the statistics on this of how much attention someone pays on an email when they look at an email, but I would assume it would be quite small of a time frame, like probably 5 to 10 seconds, maybe
Yeah.
at the most.
Yeah, and good design always creates a hierarchy of information. So you're going to get smaller and smaller with the less important information. Okay, so that's content. I feel like what is there's another thing,
One
compliance.
last
We kind of,
question regarding content and images, and your suggestion of linking images would be: what is your thought on how many images you might use in an email blast, given the fact that a lot of the times when people open their email, the email probably might not be set to show right away. So you would
Yes.
have to actually say
Yes.
display images to see that.
Yes. Yes. So I actually worked with a client and they did this one thing that used to drive me mental. In MailChimp, it'll tell you when your image is too big, but it won't adjust it for you. And it will look fine in the preview. It will look fine when you even send a test email sometimes. But in certain types of email, especially if you're in Gmail, it'll probably be fine. But in certain types of inboxes, those will blow up huge and then your email looks like it looks terrible. So you want to make sure you're sizing your images, and you also want to make sure that you have the alt text done for description, not SEO. So alt text is super important for those people that are going to be looking at your work in maybe a corporate setting where it filters out all the images and then you're left with the alt text. It'll always show the alt text. And I remember the first one that I sent probably in like, when was that? 2000 and it must have been like 2010, I bet. 2010,
Mhm.
probably even maybe even earlier. I sent one out and those days you could choose whether you want, and I think you can still choose how you sign up if you get just a text-based one or an HTML one, which includes the images. But on the text one, I have it was for a massage um, our RMT place, and the alt text ended up pulling directly from the stock photography description, which
Mm.
was something like uh, uh, gorgeous young woman getting a massage on her shoulders, and it sounded salacious. So you don't really want that kind of an alt text showing up in people's inboxes. You want to make sure that it's descriptive enough for visually impaired folks, and and it creates an image, but it's it's going to actually reflect well the brand. That's what we're always trying to do.
Yeah, I guess thinking of your image as an image trying to depict something specific for your email, you if that image doesn't show, the alt text needs to describe what it is that you were trying to get across with that
Yeah,
image so that people could
mostly.
actually read that.
Yes, so mostly. So sometimes you do this thing where the image is more of an abstract, and in that case, I would still describe the image so that it makes sense with the content. I might say red abstract depicting the feeling of leadership or something like that. That would be a decent alt text to have because
I
it
guess
gets
my
across.
Yeah, my thought of why I mentioned that was because I find a lot of emails are basically, if it's not like the product itself, which you could say what the product is, obviously. If it's because a lot of people in newsletters, for instance, Black Friday is coming up. There's probably going to
Right.
be emails people are getting that are like Black Friday sale, 50% off everything. It's an image of just that text, right? So
Yeah,
your alt text will be that same statement just
yeah,
in the alt text so that when you look at that, the visual people who have images turned on see it visually. But if you don't have the image, it still
yeah.
says what the image says.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So it has to make it make sense. That's
Mm-hmm.
basically it. Think about it, make it make sense. Okay, so we have one more minute, and I think we had sort of thought that we would cover a couple of the email platforms, but it doesn't really we can't really get into it that well. But
We could
um,
probably go into that into a larger, like, half-hour topic.
oh yeah,
The
maybe we should do that as part
different
two.
email platforms that we could,
Okay,
yeah, that would be good.
all right. Yeah, I think that would be great, and then we can kind of look at what each features, what application they would be good for,
Mhm.
whose business, and pricing is also a big factor. Oh, the last thing I forgot, we almost forgot. The one thing about the lists, it's better to have one list and segment your list so you can deal with dynamic content and all of that, than having multiple lists. And part of that is about castle compliance because some people, when they unsubscribe, they only unsubscribe from each list and they might not realize that they're on a bunch of lists. If you've organized the lists, if they've signed up ticking that they want all those lists, chances are that'll be fine. But you have to really think about that in your list. thing. And what else was about list? That was last thing. Was that the last thing? Uh,
We can
yeah.
expand on that definitely in part
Yeah.
two because I
Yes.
recall we were gonna talk a little bit about that as well.
All right, we're going to do a part two, guys. So, thank you for joining us today. If you're wherever you're watching us from, we are actually streaming from the Facebook group called Cyberpunk Geek
Geeks marketing,
Marketing
that's it.
Mixer, and you can join us there. There's lots of other conversations that are going on during the week and other events that you can join. If not, join us where you are right now. Next week, we are going to have our monthly roundup, and what is it called?
This
Our
month in the world of marketing.
Yeah, this month in the world of marketing at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thanks for joining.
Bye, everyone.